Are you a Black woman or a Black girl with symptoms of OCD or obsessive-compulsive disorder? If so, this video is for you. I'm going to be talking about how the demands of living in oppressive systems may result in us experiencing symptoms of OCD as Black women and girls. So keep watching for more. Please subscribe. Please comment down below if anything resonates with you. And yeah, as you're joining, please introduce yourself in the chat so that we can say hello. But yes, hi everyone, I'm Marissa Price. I'm a Black woman social worker, writer, healer, educator, sharing information and resources with Black women and girls in mind to help us liberate ourselves from stigma and shame around mental health. So like I said, please subscribe if you're interested in this type of content. Share this video if it resonates. And again, leave your experience below if this rings true to you. Hey Nia, good to see you. Thank you for joining. Yes, as you're joining, please say hello in the chat so we can say hello to you. But yes, this video is for educational purposes only. Do want to make that clear. It does not provide any official diagnosis. This is just me simply laying out the symptoms, the causes of OCD, and then also connecting it to the larger systems of oppression at play and how these may impact symptoms that we exhibit that really mirror those of OCD. Obsessive-Compulsive Disorder. Hey, Marissa, good to see you. Hello. Hello. So yes, I did take inspiration from this video from a few places. So one is from the video I did a few months ago at this point called Black Girl Depression. I recorded this earlier this year, and I linked that in the description section as well if you do want to check that out. Hey, Latrice, good to see you. Good to see you. I'll be going live with Latrice on Thursday. We'll be talking about what is your spiritual birthright, which I'm excited about, at 8 p.m. Eastern. So yes, look out for that, y'all. But yeah, this video laid out how the symptoms of depression may differ for Black women and girls based on the ways in which we are socialized. So they may not show up in the same way that the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is used to diagnose mental health disorders, they may not show up in the same way. So if you're going to a therapist who is not well versed in this, they may overlook your symptoms and not even know that you're experiencing depression, right? Because you may be irritable, you may be experiencing superwoman syndrome, and these are symptoms of depression that Black women and girls exhibit, again, because of the ways that we are socialized. So if you're interested in learning more about Black girl depression, please click the link in the description section to watch that video. So my other inspiration, my experiences growing up as a Black girl exhibiting what I now know are symptoms of OCD, though I was never officially diagnosed. So this is kind of touching on my lived experience as well. And also an amazing article I came across a couple years ago by Alma Levon Rice called Watcher Within, Watchers Without, My Black OCD Story, which is also linked in the description section. And I would encourage you to read this. It's an amazing, amazing article. If you are someone who is curious about learning more about OCD, if you have some of the symptoms that you think may align with the diagnosis, I would encourage you to read her article because it's amazing. Rabia, hey, welcome. Hello to you. Hello to you. Okay, yes. So what is OCD? So I did link the article that I'm pulling from in the description as well from Cleveland Clinic. But OCD is obsessive-compulsive disorder, right? So in OCD, obsessions are unwanted, intrusive thoughts or mental images that cause intense anxiety. Compulsions are repetitive actions that you feel like you have to do to ease or get rid of the obsessions. So it's kind of like a 1-2 punch. That's how I think about it. So you're obsessing about something, these unwanted, intrusive thoughts that you're having, and then you're also engaging in compulsive behaviors to try to rid those thoughts from your mind. So you get in this cycle where you're obsessing and then you're engaging in a compulsive behavior and you're realizing it's not doing anything to eliminate the obsession long term, right? So you'll go back right into the same cycle. So that's when it becomes a disorder because it's interrupting your daily life. And again, this can be diagnosed by a mental health professional. I did link therapy resources in the description section as well, if you are interested in that. But yeah, in other words, it's a combination of obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors to try to ease those thoughts. Like I said, a consistent cycle that you're in. You're obsessing about something, you're engaging in a behavior that's compulsive to try to ease those thoughts, right? And it's a never ending cycle until you step in, which is one of the things I want to emphasize. You have the power to step in and bring your awareness to what's happening that you may not be aware of, that's happening in your mind, by identifying the patterns that are going on in your brain. And I do want to emphasize, we have the power to rewire our brains. That's something that hit me this morning. Again, when I was in the shower, I have like the best thoughts in the shower. But like, we have the power to rewire our brains to create new neural pathways. So it's not like if you're exhibiting these symptoms, you're just stuck in this pattern, this cycle forever. The fact that you're bringing your awareness to it is a first step to changing your life, right? How you're interacting, so that it benefits you. And you realize that you don't have to go down that path. Once you recognize that you can bring yourself out of it, right? And that's really like the goal of like cognitive behavioral therapy, recognizing that you're in this and that you can also step out of it too. All is not lost. Yeah, Latrice says, yes, awareness is king. It is. It is. Yes. Yeah. I'm actually working on a book on how to heal from childhood trauma, just a short book, like an ebook. But that's like the first step, right? Bringing your awareness to what you experienced. That's huge. And getting to that phase is not necessarily the easiest. And I feel like we tend to overlook that. The fact that you're even aware that you are exhibiting symptoms of OCD, right? That you have experienced childhood trauma, that is huge, because now you're on the cycle of change, changing your life for the betterment of you, right? That's huge. Rabia says, I used to watch a show called Monk. Oh, yeah. Who is said to have OCD. It was the show in a music project I was assigned that led me on my way to an autism assessment. Wow, I have OCD tendencies, not enough for a diagnosis. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I remember Monk. Wow, that's a throwback. I haven't thought about Monk in a while. But yes, yeah. Yeah. And just bringing your awareness, like even now that you know the symptoms that I'm going to lay out, like I said, if you're interested in going to a mental health professional to get a diagnosis, to lead you on that path, now you have the information. I think that's key. That's key. Yeah. So what do the obsessions look like? Which is the O in OCD. So the obsessions may look like fear of coming into contact with perceived contaminated substances such as germs or dirt. And again, I linked the article that I'm pulling from the Cleveland Clinic in the description section if you want to look at this yourself. But fear of causing harm to yourself or someone else because you're not related to sex, fear of making a mistake, excessive concern with morality, right or wrong, feelings of doubt or disgust, excessive concern with your sexual orientation or gender identity, need for order, neatness, symmetry, or perfection, and a need for constant reassurance. So if any of these behaviors resonated, that is the O in OCD. That is the obsession, right? These unwanted thoughts that you're dealing with, these intrusive thoughts that really interrupt your day-to-day activities that just pop up, right? So that's important to recognize. Nia Lee says, I wish there was more understanding about OCD by therapists in general. Yeah. They often describe it as an issue with control. It's much more complex than that. Then you add in our intersecting identities. Couldn't have said it better myself. Yes, that is so true. Yeah, and I agree. I mean, even reading this article that I came across a few years ago, that really led me on the path to educating myself and understanding that a lot of the symptoms that I was exhibiting from early on, like 8 years old, fell into this category. And when I went to therapy, no one told me that you may be experiencing OCD, right? It was just through reading this article. I'm like, hold on, these are a lot of the symptoms that I have. And how often does that happen? And like you said, then add in our intersecting identities that cause a lot of these symptoms that I'm going to lay out. How does that impact us? Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. New Life Curator, hello, says, I love that show, Monk. Yeah. Yeah, I watched it a few times. Yeah. I love when you get like a throwback memory, something you haven't thought about in a while. Like, wow, I do remember that show. Yes. Okay. So the compulsions, the C in OCD. And if y'all have any questions, I'll try my best to answer. Just please put them in the chat if you do. And then let us know how you're doing on this Tuesday. I know a lot's going on in the world. Yeah. Rabia says our intersecting identities tend to keep us from receiving answers sooner rather than later. Ooh. That's very deep. I gotta sit with that one. Yeah. Yeah. Monk is my comfort show. I love that. I love that. I love comfort shows that you can just sit and just watch episode after episode. I love that. Oh no, you're good. You're good, Nia. I got what you meant. No worries. No worries. Ooh, that's a good question that I do not know the answer to. Does hoarding fall under OCD? You know what? I'm looking at my list and it's right here in front of me as I'm going through about to go through the C's. Yeah. That's the compulsive behavior. So the intrusive thought happens first, right? And then the C, hoarding would fall under C, the compulsive behavior, which is hoarding. Yes. Thank you for that question. All right. So the compulsions, arranging things in a very specific way, such as items on your dresser, bathing, cleaning, or washing your hands over and over. This is something that I experienced, again, very early on, that I had no idea fell under the umbrella of OCD. I went through this phase in like middle school, late elementary school, where I had to like wash my hands compulsively, right? And I didn't know what that was. So just having that information going forward is very powerful. Collecting or hoarding items that have no personal or financial value, repeatedly checking things such as locks, switches, and doors, constantly checking that you haven't caused someone harm, constantly seeking reassurance. And I added in here perfectionism, which is huge, something I also experience. Rituals related to numbers, such as counting, doing a task a specific amount of times, or excessively preferring or avoiding certain numbers, saying certain words or prayers while doing unrelated tasks. Rituals, right? And compulsions can also include avoiding situations that trigger obsessions as well. Mia says, I like how this conversation is getting others to think more critically about their own behaviors. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. And there's a lot of power in that. Because a lot of us are just, like I've said this before, just operating, especially in survival mode, within the systems that we're living in that just tell us to do, right? Basically be a robot. Which Rashida said on her channel when I was being interviewed by her about Black girl depression, your dream strategist. Yeah, we're being roboticized is the term that she used. And so to be able to come out and kind of view yourself from a bird's eye view, what behaviors am I engaging in? Is this serving me? Is this contributing to my wellness? To be able to observe yourself and bring your awareness to what you're doing, that's huge. That's huge. Yeah. Latrice says, I sometimes have it with food. Yeah, I have to eat my fries before I eat the sandwich. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting to like see, and not to say that everything that we do like falls under this, right? But just to bring our awareness to how we're operating in daily life, I think is the key. Yeah. So the C, right? Compulsions, they're temporary fixes because the obsessions come back. They're time consuming, right? They interrupt your daily life. Hey, Alicia, good to see you as always. Yes. Yeah, like I said, they come back. They come back. So you're engaging in the behaviors to try to eliminate the obsessions. That's why you're engaging in the compulsions. But the roots are actually much deeper. right? And I'll get to that, like what causes OCD. But the compulsions that you engage in are not going to eliminate the obsessions long term. Right. Yeah. So what causes OCD? So the first one, childhood trauma, which I talk about a lot. So some studies show an association between childhood trauma, such as abuse or neglect, and the development of OCD. Right. And I really think of this as our brain's way of trying to like take control of a situation where maybe we didn't have control before. So we develop that pattern of trying to have a behavior to disrupt the obsessive thought, but then we're trapped in this endless cycle, right? Until we interrupt it ourselves, until we notice that we're engaging in it. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Nia. Yes, yes. Rabia, yes. I'm grateful that there are platforms that allow for this awareness. I agree. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think YouTube has been so pivotal in that. Just having access to this level of information that used to be gate kept, right? In these ivory towers that we had to like access through like lock and key. Like, no, now we're sharing information widely so that if this resonates with you, you have the information, you have the resources, and you realize that you're not alone in this, which is also key to healing. Yeah. Hey, Donna. Do obsessions trigger the compulsion and vice versa? Yes. Yes to the first part. Obsessions do trigger the compulsion. So that's kind of the track of OCD. Obsession, compulsion, and vice versa. And vice versa. Do compulsions trigger obsessions? I think so. Right? I don't have any, like I said, this is not like scientific definitive knowledge, but just like what resonates is yeah, because it's a cycle. It's a cycle. So the more that you engage in the compulsion, you realize it's not eliminating that underlying fear, you will engage again in the obsession. It's like a continuous cycle until you disrupt it. Yeah. Lavendula, hey. Good to see you. Yes, this conversation is so healing for me. My now fired therapist likely doesn't have this knowledge since a lot of these symptoms I showed were thrown under the control umbrella. Ooh, to Nia's point. Wow. And you know what? This is bringing up something else about the way that we're regarded as Black women when we like present the symptoms in therapy. And then we're just told like, no, this is just a control issue. That's bringing up something else. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And that again goes back to like the video I did on Black girl depression. If we're telling a trusted mental health professional our symptoms and they're just writing it off, that's when people lose trust with therapists, right? People who are supposed to be supporting you, listening to you, helping you, believing you. I mean, let's just start there. And people lose faith. Because if you're just writing off my symptoms that may actually be OCD, if it goes down that path, why am I here? That begs that question. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Nia says, I know that the C stands for compulsions, but I resonate with it being referred to as rituals. Yeah, people who are unaware of the C in OCD believe it refers to control. Really? Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard that. Wow. Wow. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's important to have self-compassion as well. Because if we're being told that it's just like we're overly controlling and actually we're exhibiting symptoms of OCD, right? That kind of takes like the shame off of us. That I'm just like highly controlling. What if you're actually exhibiting these symptoms with roots deeper in childhood, right? Something that you experienced that was very traumatic. Leaning more into self-compassion versus self-blame for what you're exhibiting. Yeah. so like I said, what causes OCD? Childhood trauma. Yeah. Genetics. So studies show that people who have a first degree relative with OCD are at a higher risk for developing the condition. The risk increases if the relative developed OCD as a child or a teen, right? And this is the case for me growing up, seeing people around me go through that cycle, the obsessive compulsion cycle at a young age, and seeing that. And then I adopted those behaviors as well. And I had no idea what was going on. Yeah, so once you have that awareness, did the people around you exhibit these same behaviors? Then you start to pick up on the pattern. Maybe you're just continuing a pattern that you saw early on, but you can disrupt it as cycle disruptors, right? If it's not serving you, you can disrupt it. Yes. Ooh. Nia, yes, they pathologize our behaviors. I got to write that down. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. I agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even being in graduate school for social work, seeing, I got to do a video on my experiences in graduate school, but seeing the professors and the way that they were teaching about these things, like even in a clinical setting, and realizing that therapists are also people with their own biases, right? When they come into a therapy setting, and we're putting a lot of trust in them to get it right. We're like coming to them in very vulnerable moments. And sometimes that requires, like, I spoke with Kamisha Jones about this, interviewing a therapist, making sure that they're the right fit for you. Because just because you have the letters, and I'm always cognizant of that, doesn't mean that you're a good person. It means you went to school to get the degree and the certification, but it doesn't mean that you're a good person. And I think that's important to say. The tree says sometimes people weaponize religion to neglect their mental health. Self-compassion is essential to healing. Yeah, that's true. And I agree. Self-compassion is essential too. Yeah, it is. All right. Other causes, brain changes. So imaging studies have shown differences in the frontal cortex, in subcortical structures of the brain in people who have OCD. So that could be a cause as well. Yeah, and I also see panda syndrome, which is also linked in the article that I'm pulling from the Cleveland Clinic. If you would, want to read more about that. But yeah, some of the causes, and I think that's huge to point out. Childhood trauma, which is something I'm focusing more on. What did you experience very early on that now your brain may be kind of like overcorrecting in your everyday life? Was there a point where you felt like you were out of control? Right? Where things were like rather out of your control. And so now you're engaging in obsessions, compulsions to try to get some of that back. Try to recreate like a pattern that you experienced early on. Right? And these, again, are just like suggestions, ideas, educational purposes. But yeah, some things to think about. Oh, mhm. Rabia, thank you. Thank you for this question. How was it growing up with OCD as a Black girl, if you don't mind me asking? I know in the 90s it wasn't widely discussed. Yeah, so I didn't even know. Probably until about a couple years ago, that it was even OCD. I thought it was just anxiety. And I, again, like looking back throughout my childhood, being diagnosed with anxiety and depression at such an early age, I'm having to go back and understand like the environments that I was in that was causing these symptoms. I don't think that it can just be easily labeled as anxiety and depression, which is like very common to do that, especially in like the Western medicine complex, right? Society, we just put an individual label on something that someone's experiencing without understanding the environment that they're operating in, which is what's the case for me. But it was hard. It was hard. It was isolating, not understanding why I would engage in these behaviors. And just now coming to that understanding as an adult has brought me a lot of clarity and healing. So, yeah, thank you for that question. It wasn't easy. It was hard. It was hard. Yeah. And again, when you feel like you're the only one experiencing this, because people don't talk about this a lot, there's still a huge stigma on mental health issues that we experience. So when no one else is sharing it, you kind of feel like you're the weird one, right? That is just you, when a lot of us are experiencing this. And I'm going to get into the article that Alma wrote that kind of ties our experiences living in the society to exhibiting symptoms of OCD, which was life-changing for me to read that. Yeah, Rabia says anxiety and depression seems like the starter package of diagnosis. Yeah. Yeah. I have thoughts. I have thoughts, yeah. But it's very easy to label someone, right, as just having an individual issue. If we're all experiencing depression and anxiety, like, there has to be something larger at play that's causing these symptoms. Could it be this world that we're in that is not operating like a human world? It could be. It could be, right? But again, that implicates the people who came up with the diagnoses. The entire Western medical complex that we're living in, that implicates them. I might write this down and do another video on that because, yeah. And I think Black and Indigenous social workers and therapists are like leading this movement to really educate people about systemic oppression and how this causes mental health disorders. That we can't just put a label on someone and individualize what they're experiencing when it's a pattern. When it's a pattern. And it fails to recognize the systemic oppression that we experience day to day. Yeah. Alexandria, hello. Yeah. And it's very difficult to find doctors that actually want to heal and get to the root versus, ooh, yes, handing out medicine like candy. That is true. That is very true. Yeah. 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 And like I said, if you need medication, please take it. Please take it. That's one of the things I have written down. Aside from therapy, medication, if you need it. But the over reliance on medication, again, because we're living in larger systems, right? It can't be understated that we were never meant to live like this. And what impact has that had on our mental health? I mean, just zooming out to how we got, right? How we got here. Coercion, right? It was forced removal. And so we're trying to operate as if these things didn't happen and this is just supposed to be normal life that we're in. Like, no, that's not true. That's not true. Yeah. Lavendula says, it's so hard trusting in the system that once categorized slaves, wanting to run away. Say it as a symptom of a disorder. Yeah. 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 Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. That is another video idea because that's real. That's real, right? Being diagnosed with having like a mental health disorder for knowing that you are enslaved and this is not right. And I got to get out. So then you begin to, ooh, that's deep. You begin to question like everything about yourself when other people around you are being like, you're delusional. What do you mean you shouldn't be enchained? This is your lot in life. This is how you're supposed to be. But something within you is like telling you, no, it's not. And so that friction between the messages that you're receiving externally from your oppressors and what you know internally to be true, what does that create? Mental health conditions a lot. Because it's like a battle that you're engaging in internally in your brain because you know it's not right. You know it's not right. But everyone around you is telling you that this is the way that it is. Yeah. Thank you, Lavendula. Yeah. Leslyn, hey, good to see you. Yes. Does pulling eyelashes very often count as having OCD? I would say yes. And like I said, this is not like anything in stone, anything other than my thoughts, right, and my experiences. But yeah, I would say that that would fall under the C, the compulsive behavior. Yeah. Thank you for this question. Yeah. Right. Right. That was an actual diagnosis. Delusion for knowing that you're not meant to be enslaved. Right? You can take me out of my homeland forcibly, but there's always going to be something within me that knows that this is not right. So now you have an entire system dedicated to convincing me that I'm wrong. That these thoughts, these beliefs, these visions of freedom that I'm having are actually delusional. And I should be okay with being enchained. No. No. Yeah. Nia says, first and foremost, yeah, therapy is a business no matter how much your therapist cares. Yeah. They're working under a system that does not benefit BIPOC. Yeah. 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 And unfortunately, yeah. Right. There are a lot of therapists out there who do care, right? Who do care, but they're also constrained by by capitalism. So a lot of us will enter into social work, therapy, psychology with gifts, with the gift of being a healer, right? That was like, this touches on what is your spiritual birthright, which I'm getting ready to talk about with Latrice on Thursday. But then we're within these like capitalist, very restrictive systems, and but there's pressure to view it as a business. Yes. Agreed. Yeah. It's evil. It is evil. Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Leslie says, I refuse. I will not be held against my will. Right? Right. Yep. And it's very important to recognize again where those messages are coming from and who they benefit and what system it upholds to convince us that, again, going back to Lavendula's comment, that we're delusional. That we're delusional for knowing something deep within us that will not go away. It's like, no, I was meant to be free. No matter how you try to convince me, no matter how much you use violence as a tactic to reinforce what you're telling me, something within me will not quiet down, which means that's sacred. Yeah. Yeah. Leslie says, I watch OCD behaviors every day, and I'm stunned that they are ignored so often. Yeah. 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 And this is like new for me too, right? Just educating myself on OCD. Again, I was not educated in like a clinical setting. So a lot of this, all of this is me seeking out education myself and then applying it to my lived experiences to gain clarity and understanding of what was happening. A lot of the times very early on. that is now informing how I'm showing up in adulthood. Yeah. Mia said, I feel like this is the space to ask these questions because our compulsions may differ. Yes. That's true. May differ than other groups of people. Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, our symptoms can be different based on the ways that we're socialized, based on the oppression that we encounter day to day, intersectional oppression, which I linked more about in the description section, intersectionality, coined by Kimberly Crenshaw. But how is this impacting us? Right? I'm going to get into Alma's article in a second too, but that's real. Our symptoms are not always what's laid out in the standard manual, which did not have us anywhere in the room when it was being developed. By people who didn't even view us as human. I mean, let's be honest. So how is that now being used as a standard manual to diagnose what we're experiencing? It's leaving so much out. Yeah. Intergenerational trauma. Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Oh yeah, I'm excited too. Yes, I'm gonna be speaking with Latrice, Black Girl Magic Lawyer, Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern on my channel. We're gonna be talking about what is your spiritual birthright. Yeah, excited. Nia says, what do you think about Black individuals going back to their ancient roots, spiritual beliefs? What do you believe is the reason for this? I love it. To the first question, I love it. Because I feel like there's so much knowledge that we can access, that we've been told that this is like we have to stay very confined to like post-colonization. And that's where history began. It's like, no, absolutely not. There's thousands of years that you can pull from. That's literally within our DNA when we think about epigenetics. That's passed down from generation to generation, that we've been told that we don't have any ability to reclaim. That's not true. Because how are we still here literally saying the same things that our ancestors said, sometimes without even an understanding that they said it? Something's being passed down from generation to generation, so we can access those healing techniques that we used before that were effective. And so I love it. What do you believe is the reason for this? I think the limitations within Western society. When I think about being trained as a social worker, everything that was left out of my education that I'm now having to educate myself about. Right. And shout out to Coach Yolanda on YouTube. But her really like opening my eyes to spiritual healing in practices, ancestral practices of healing that I was actually seeking. The more I think about it, going into the field of social work, that is what I was calling to my spirit. But that's not what I found. In graduate school, I found trauma. I found white supremacy. Extremely traumatic experiences. So I think there's a mismatch between what our spirits are seeking and what we're having access to and what we're being told we should be okay with. That doesn't feel healing. That doesn't feel nourishing. So we're having to go back to healing practices prior to colonization to actually get what we need. So I hope that answered your question. Yeah. Rabia says it's sad that academia doesn't educate on conditions like OCD, ASD, ADHD, and even PTSD. They're too common for it not to be taught. Yeah. And I think there's power. There's power in understanding. Again, I have an issue with diagnoses, so maybe I'm not the person to talk about this, but just even having an understanding of symptoms and how they might fall under the umbrella of these diagnoses can give you information about yourself, how you're operating, healing tactics, techniques, therapy resources. Yeah, I agree. And the reason I have an issue with diagnoses is because it's so limiting. And like I said, a lot of our symptoms are left out. We were not thought of when developing the manual, the standard manual that's used to create diagnoses, to label people as individuals as having a problem. We were not in that conversation. And so we're left out so often. Yeah. No, we weren't. We weren't. No. It has to be said. It has to be said. Yeah. Even being used as like subjects for a lot of clinical trials and not being viewed as human during those trials when that advanced Western medical research and diagnoses, right? Not getting our consent because they didn't view us as human. But yet this advanced their understanding of conditions. And a lot of these understandings that we had already prior to colonization. This was not new to a lot of us. It was new to certain folks, right? But it was not new. Like I said, this is thousands of years of human history. But we're told that we have to limit our understanding to 400 years. Because that's when like history, time began. False. No, it's not. That's actually a tactic of oppression to limit your understanding of history. Because it also works to limit your imagination. If you have no understanding what has already occurred, how can you even envision what can occur, what is possible to occur? Yeah. Yeah. Nia says, Robbie, a bingo. However, there's the claim there's always so much to learn. We are complex individuals. That we are. That we are. Yeah. 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 Oh, sorry, I'm behind in the chat, y'all. Yes. That, yes. Yes. Without anesthesia. Without anesthesia. Right? Because they didn't view us, again, as human, capable of feeling pain. But yet our bodies are the basis of a lot of medical research and findings. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's why we have to take back our humanity. We really do. Because this is the history. And we're experiencing the ramifications of it. We're being left out of the diagnosis space. But our bodies literally form the foundation of people being able to recognize conditions, being able to label these things. But yet we're being left out of the conversation now when it comes to treatment, healing. How does that work? How does that work? Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sorry, listen. Oh, no, you're good. You're good. It said I'm here listening, learning, but I'm in a meeting. No. You're good. You're good. Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Me too. That's so special. That is so special to be able to learn from multiple generations, have a space like that. I love it. I love it because we each can contribute something like from our generation. I love it. Mm-hmm. Ayabo Jackson, yes, please correct me if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Thank you, Marissa, for this conversation. You're welcome. It's always good to see you. I'm a 7-year-old grandmother of 9 girls, ages 5 to 22, and I appreciate this dialogue. You're welcome. It's always good to see you. Yes. Oh, no. The replay will be available, y'all. You'll have to take notes. I think it was Alicia that said this is not a class presentation in one of your videos, and that has sat with me. Because the way I treat this, like, this is not a class presentation. You haven't tell myself that. It's not. Yes. Alexandria says, I recommend a film called Crazy Wise. It talks about this exact topic of Indigenous culture's approach to mental health. Oh, thank you. I'll write that down. Life-changing for someone with a diagnosis. Yeah. And I was just thinking about this, like, the individualizing of mental health conditions really leads you to believe that it's just you. Like, it reinforces that idea that it's just you when it's not, right? Because when we start sharing our stories, it's like, oh, I have these symptoms too. And so do I. And so do I. And then you notice a pattern over time. It's like, oh, it's not just me. And you can develop a pattern of understanding once you recognize that this may be something societal, systemic, that a lot of us are experiencing that are leading to similar symptomatology. And it's not just you. And what does that do to disintegrate the shame that you may have been carrying around? And no, it's not just you. Yeah. Oh, thank you. It was stressing me out. You're doing. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Yep. Recovering overachiever here. I'm like, I don't have to treat everything like I'm going in to present to class. So this feels very relaxed. So thank y'all so much for contributing in the chat. Yes. Alexandria says, yes, very isolating. Yeah. Thank you for your vulnerability and willingness to have this conversation. Absolutely. Yeah. It can be very isolating. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah, it can. It can. When you receive a diagnosis, first of all, sometimes that's scary. Because depending on the therapist that you have, they really don't explain to you what that means, what treatment looks like, right? That you're not the only one, that this is actually a systemic issue. They treat it like it's just you. They label you often. And that doesn't always feel the best. Right? You may have the term, which may help you, like, again, healing resources, education about what you're experiencing. But now I got a label on me. I'm like, ooh, now I have major, like depression. Now I have anxiety. It doesn't always feel the best. So the more of us who can understand that our symptoms are actually very similar, and understand that the diagnoses that we receive are taken from a manual that did not have us in mind in that capacity when it comes to healing, you can kind of take that weight off of yourself. That, yeah, it doesn't feel great because it was never meant for me. It was never meant for my healing. Yeah. Yes, the way they diagnose you is even more isolating. Yeah. They make you feel like you're the problem, makes you feel wrong and powerless. Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah. It does make you feel wrong and powerless. It does. And also that they hold the keys to your healing. Like, you have to continuously seek their knowledge, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but that they hold the keys to your healing. I think I've written about this before, right? Our oppressors do not hold the keys to our healing. That doesn't make sense to me. But within a lot of these models that are very confining, constricting, that is what we are taught to believe. And it does feel powerless. It does. Yeah. I agree with that. How do you all feel about therapists not being able to screen for ASD and ADHD? It may differ where y'all are from. I would love how the screening process differs everywhere. Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. I did not know that. Like I said, y'all, I am not a I was not educated in like a clinical context in social work, which I think is actually a benefit the more I've been sitting with that, because I don't have that understanding, right? I'm not limited by my education in that sense that it has to fall within these very narrow confines within the manual that we're taught to adhere to. I don't have that. And so I'm able to see where our symptoms exist outside of that manual. Yeah. Because we're being overlooked and it's just unacceptable. Yeah, it is cold and soulless. It is. It is. Yeah. Yeah. Because there's like no understanding of what you have been through, of what you have survived often, that have created these symptoms that you're now coming into trusting someone to assist you with. Just like, here's your label, here's your diagnosis. Like, yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, I've experienced that in therapeutic settings as well, like a lack of compassion. Right? It's like going to the doctor's office and they're just like giving you this thing that's huge, that feels like a huge boulder, and they're just saying it so matter of factly. It's like, hold on, this is life changing. Where's the humanity? Where's the compassion for what now I'm realizing is a diagnosis? Yeah, yeah. Leslie says that is the word shame. We are shamed into accepting the okey doke, and it shows in the stress and overwhelm that we experience and share with others we love. Yeah. Yeah. True. Shame. Shame. Yeah. That's huge. Shame. The correlation. Shame and depression. Because sometimes, like, receiving a diagnosis, though I said, like, it can be helpful. It can be helpful to have that, to educate yourself. The shame of that, because the stigma exists around mental health, and I've been thinking a lot about that too. Like, why is there a stigma around mental health? And I think it goes back to Lavendula's point. Because of the ways that these diagnoses were used to silence us, our natural outrage, to label us as like that person needs to be over there, to isolate us from our community. Um, so yeah, that's real. Stigma of mental health. And we also have not been even regarded as fully human being for that long under something like the US Constitution. Right? 3/5 of a person. That's how we were regarded for a long time. And so the concept of realizing that our mental health is at stake, that no, we do have brains, that we are human beings, that we are impacted by these things that we're experiencing on the day to day, that's new. Yeah, that's new. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sienna James, yeah. Especially when it comes from a therapist by us. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I had a negative experience with a Black woman therapist before. And yeah, that can be extremely disheartening, because it's like, dang, I came here for like you to understand what I was going through, and now kind of feeling like I'm being gaslighted, right? That's a whole other thing. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, yeah. Hey, welcome. Yeah, we don't know what we don't know. I agree. I agree. Yeah. Rabia says, I know with autism and ADHD, some people camouflage their traits. In your experience, is that similar with OCD? So speaking from my personal experience, yes. Yeah. trying to like blend in, trying to like be normal, like let me not engage in this behavior right now, right? Again, to blend in, to camouflage what you're experiencing. Yeah, in my personal experience, yes. Alicia says it was never meant for me. It was never meant for my healing. No, no, and even having that understanding going forward, right? No, it wasn't. So if you're feeling like this feels kind of like off, this doesn't really feel healing to me. I know that I've experienced that before. I'm sharing all of these very like personal details with someone, but this therapeutic setting does not feel healing. It's not you. It's not you. It was never meant for your healing. It's like something that was created that we're being like, I don't want to say forced into, but like into this box that was not necessarily designed for us to heal. And then we feel like it's our thing, it's our issue when it doesn't feel healing. Well, no, that's how the system was set up. We were not included in the construction of the manual in that sense. Yeah. Yo, XOXO, hey. Just getting here. So, hello, everybody. Welcome. I believe mental health is closely linked to spirituality. Yeah, which is why they want to suppress everything with religion. Wow, thank you for that. Yeah, yeah. I agree with that. There are ties, spirituality, mental health. Absolutely. Scrolling down the chat. Yeah, that's true. Exactly. They literally use diagnoses to institutionalize people. It goes so deep. They did. Yes. Mm-hmm. Writing that down. Yes. Yep. Yeah. And just like the stigma of mental health, right? We don't want, yeah, a lot of things are coming up. Like, we don't want to be the person isolated. We don't want to be the person like left out from everyone. But the way that oppression has told us, right? Even like going back to the plantation system, the person who knew that this is not right, that this is not our experience in life, right? And to see that person maybe be labeled as having a disorder. So now that person is shunned, now that person is pushed over there. And other people, the way our brains work, we don't want to be like that person who was shunned. And so we go in the opposite direction. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Y'all are giving me some ideas. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Nia says, oh, how I wish they would acknowledge it as a systematic issue, not when prompted by me to do so. I had one therapist oh no. Point to a photo with diversity on it when inquiring about their practices. Ooh. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's that's horrible. I couldn't fit exactly what I want. Oh, that's okay. Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, I feel like this describes my grad school experience. The more I think about it. Mm-hmm. Because it is confusing. And I think Dr. Kamani has talked about this on her channel before with other Black women therapists. When you enter a field looking to help people, because again, we have gifts, a lot of us that draw us to these fields. And then we get there and it's like, what is this? This isn't what I was being called to do. because again, you're within these very limiting institutions, within these systems that are telling you that it has to be this way, that symptoms have to present exactly as they are laid out in the manual, when you know that that is not true, just based on our lived experiences. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 I agree. We need more compassionate language in therapeutic settings. But now I realize that will differ person to person based on our race, gender, age, etc. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Compassionate language. Yeah. Because I'll tell y'all, being in, I went to one of the top, in quotes, top social work schools in the country, right? And seeing, first of all, the professors and some of the folks who were training to be therapists really gave me a side eye, right? To everything. Um, yeah, it makes you question some things when you see things, how things operate internally. Like, now this is not what I was called to do. I don't know what this is, but this is not it. Yeah. Mia says, I just prefer professionals ask questions, yeah, for clarity and understanding instead of going all clinical on some of us. Where's the empathy? Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the part when you have training in clinical settings. It's very strict, right? Just speaking like from behind the scenes, it's very strict of what you have to adhere to. And that leaves no room for, like you said, empathy. Like, can I ask a question outside of the questionnaire? Well, no, because that's part of your training, that it has to be very rigid when you're questioning, when you're diagnosing people. Um, and that's why a lot of, especially like Black women therapists, opt to start their own practices so that they can bring in spiritual gifts in healing. And it doesn't have to be that rigid. Yeah, I agree. Empathy is key. Yeah. Butterfly Effect says, what is also annoying is that hey, Butterfly Effect, is that there is no recognition of how the systems of oppression are the culprits of the mental health concerns. It's like the individuals are responsible. Yeah. 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 That's my whole criticism. That is my criticism of the mental health field. It individualizes a systemic issue that many of us are experiencing. And so, with that, we don't see the connections between each other. We lose our community connections, right? This person is experiencing this, so am I. Now, if it's individualized, I think I'm just over here on an island by myself experiencing depression. That feels isolating. That feels lonely, right? You can feel stigmatized because of how we talked about mental health still being a stigma, talking about it openly. Yeah, I agree with that. I do. So, getting back to my notes, yes. Treatment. Like I said, therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, and also exposure therapy may be helpful. And again, I link therapy resources in the description section. Medication may also be helpful. Also, realizing you have the power to rewire your own brain. A lot of my healing from symptoms, and again, I'm not fully healed. Sometimes they still pop back up. But part of that is awareness, noticing when I am stressed, when I'm overworking, because that's when OCD symptoms will start to pop up for me a lot. And I have to tell myself to rest and stop. Just stop. Stop everything you're doing and get in bed sometimes. That's a solution sometimes for me, speaking for myself, right? But knowing that you have the ability to rewire your brain. And I know that sounds like scientific, that sounds deep, but seriously, neuroplasticity is real. The more that you bring your awareness to what behaviors you're engaging in, what you're exhibiting. This is cognitive behavioral therapy, right? That a therapist can assist you with if you do need help as well. But you have the power to do that, to lean into your brain being pliable, to go a different way, to create a different pattern that actually serves you. When you notice yourself, okay, now I'm starting to overwork, so I'm starting to engage in obsessive thoughts. Now I'm feeling the compulsive behavior start. How can I interrupt that cycle? Because where did it start? Me overworking. Where was I taught to overwork? All the messages that I've received in this society from the time I knew what was going on. To overwork, to push myself past the point of my body saying stop. So for me, that has been key, right? Stopping the cycle before it continues and actively replacing it with something else. Before I would go down an obsessive thought pattern, now I'm actually going to take a walk. So you can take that out and replace it with something. And again, a therapist can actually help you with this process as well, through something like cognitive behavioral therapy. Yes. And also exposure therapy. So a therapist might recommend you being exposed to the thing that you are scared about. So if you're scared of germs, if that's your obsessive thought, can you touch something dirty? A therapist may help you with that and see that nothing happens to you. And slowly over time, as you start to integrate these behaviors of exposing yourself to what you're afraid of, to what's causing those thoughts, you interrupt your thought pattern, right? Because now you realize that nothing life-changing, huge is going to happen. All that happens is that you touch something dirty and you're still here. You're still here. You still survived. It's a process of rewiring your synapses over time. Again, this is not a fast process. This is over time. How can you integrate behaviors that prioritize your wellness daily, even if it's just one small thing that you tweak per day that you're now aware of that you weren't before? Slow, patient process over time. Yeah. I don't know the answer to this question, Rabia. Is OCD broken up into severity levels or support needs like autism is? I don't know the answer to that, but that's a really good question. That is, yeah. Yeah, so the article that I linked, let me get the title again real quick. Watcher Within, Watchers Without, My Black OCD Story by Alma Lavon Rice, which I linked in the description section. This article was life-changing for me, just understanding how systemic oppression may create a lot of these symptoms that we're exhibiting. And that now you realize this is your body's natural response to a systemically oppressive environment that you're surviving day to day. So you have that understanding versus it just being like something's wrong with me. Again, individualizing it. No, something's actually wrong with the society that you're living in. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Wesley. Yeah, my sister is diagnosed with OCD and she is moderate, not acute. So that tells me there is a severity level. Thank you for that. Thank you. Yeah, so Alma's article mentioned a few things that are key as it relates to Black women and girls experiencing OCD. So self-surveillance, hypervigilance, living in oppressive systems. She describes feeling like someone is filming her for a movie growing up, using her vivid imagination as a child, and then her experience being told that she stole something at 10 years old by a white store clerk, which was false. She began to question herself then. right? That fanciful voice in her head turned into one that creates obsessions over things that are seemingly unlikely to happen, that she didn't actually do. But now she's questioning herself. Well, did I actually do this? Did I say this thing to that person? Was my tone like incorrect that this person may have reacted like this? Now you begin questioning yourself. And she introduces that experience at 10 years old of having a store clerk tell her that she stole something when she didn't. Right? And that began her doubting herself, her questioning herself. That developed that internal voice, which is another topic I want to talk about. How to change your internal monologue. Yeah. So she is diagnosed with OCD by a medical professional as an adult. She says, I'm curious about how anti-Black oppression and trauma heightens the hypervigilance of Black folks who already deal with anxiety disorders. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. There are degrees with all conditions or disorders. Yeah. Nia says, I had an experience like this in middle school, but not by a white clerk. Yeah. Yeah. And these are formative years. These are formative years, which is, again, why I talk about childhood trauma so often. A lot of the ways that we're interacting in adulthood are rooted in our experiences very early on. That can be tied right back to them. Well, who told me this? Well, who said this? Who accused me of doing something? And now I adopted a behavior of questioning everything that I do. Because if you can get to the root, you can break that connection. Because that connection is not serving you. It was never meant to serve you. Yeah. So Alma then goes on to describe some of her obsessions, that the police will accost her when she's eating lunch in her car because they have before, or that the employee at the store will check her bag because they have before, being extra careful that you have everything and that you're presenting well when she's like in an Uber or rideshare, based on something that has happened before with a police officer. Holding her breath when she sees a police officer, because again, this has happened before. She's had a weapon pulled on her. So these obsessions that Alma is having are actually real things that have happened to her in the past. When she has made a human mistake, she was harmed. She was traumatized. Her life was threatened. And so now her brain overcorrects, and she exhibits symptoms of OCD. So this may be a linkage that she identifies. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, when I read this, I was like, whew. Mm-hmm. Being able to connect what you're experiencing to, like the symptoms that you're experiencing, to your lived experiences, right? Like hypervigilance. Where did you develop that as a survival technique with something that actually happened? This is not something that you're making up. And just releasing that idea that this is something that you're fabricating, that you're creating in your mind. No, it's rooted in something that you experienced. Your body developed a trauma response to it, and you're still operating in that trauma response, although you don't have to in this current situation. So yeah, just having that understanding like releases that shame that something's wrong with you individually. It does. It does. Environment definitely shapes how we develop in our formative years. 100%. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. It is disturbing when she lays out all the behaviors, the compulsions that she engages in due to obsessive thoughts that are actually rooted in real experiences, right? But now she engages in compulsions to try to thwart or like go against, heal some of those obsessions. And just understanding that these were rooted in systemic oppression that she experienced day to day in society. Having people check her bag, right? Having people pull a weapon on you. Having someone come up to you in your car. How do these traumatizing events, how do our brains respond to them and create patterns? So now we're operating in, like, again, the chain of OCD, obsession. We're thinking that someone's gonna come up to us in the car because it's happened before. Now we engage in compulsive behaviors. So now I'm gonna check everything like 50 times to make sure I'm doing everything correctly, to make sure that I'm like here, when really it was not us the entire time. I think that's important to say too. It was not us. It was nothing that we did or didn't do. We're operating in systems of oppression. Trying to survive. And a lot of the times internalizing what we're experiencing as something that we're doing incorrectly and that we need to correct next time and overcorrect. It was not us the entire time. Yeah. 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 Exactly. I never feel safe. Yeah. I always have to remind myself that I'm okay. I'm not in trouble. People don't hate me. Me too. Me too. Yeah. 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 Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's real. That's real. We will be in these trauma responses based on past experiences, right? And just bring your awareness to that. At least for me, that has been key to healing. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I'm sending you love. Yeah, definitely from real experiences. Yeah, yeah. And just reading this and being able to connect, like I said, being like 8 years old, engaging in obsessions, compulsions. What environment was I in at the time? I literally had to like take myself back to, okay, it was an unsafe environment in numerous different ways. How did my body respond? Right? It's actually like showing your body love too. Like my body was in this pattern to protect me from potential harm within a system of oppression. How do I now interrupt that using my agency as an adult? Right? And again, this is difficult because we're still living in systems of oppression where these real things do happen. And so to say that healing 100% is possible, no, because these wounds are going to be continuously reopened. Right? When we heal from someone thinking someone's going to accost us in the car, we've gotten past that. Okay, I'm fine. Well, then next week someone actually does like come over to your car and ask you what you're doing here. It's like now I got to go back through the entire healing process and I'm being exposed to harm that's reopening these wounds, which is not fair. Wow. Yeah. Hope Richie. Hey, I think you changed your name. Hope Richie. Yeah. I remember in high school, a teacher told us laughing that we need to drop out fear of public speaking. Literally mocking. Oh no, literally mocking people with anxiety. I'm still traumatized today. Wow. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you experienced that. And I think that's further proof for us that what we experience very early on can still be impacting us. That is trauma. Something that's still sitting with you, that's impacting how you're showing up day to day, that's disrupting your wellness. That event was traumatic, right? Like I said, I'm writing a guidebook on healing from childhood trauma. And that's one of the things, like just acknowledging that experience was traumatic. That can be so healing because we've been taught so often to gaslight ourselves, to go down, what did I do? What could I have done? What if it was just a really disgusting situation that you were in and you survived? Your body did what it had to do to survive. Yeah. 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 Just going through the chat. Thank y'all so much. This is a beautiful chat. This is a beautiful chat. I agree, Latrice. Yeah. I believe mental health care should be free for Black people. Yeah. It should. Yeah. And again, realizing that we were never meant to be, do I want to say healed? Within the spaces of Western society, we have had to advocate for our own healing. Because if you don't view someone as human, you don't think they're in need of healing. You don't think they're in need of mental health support. You don't care because you don't view them as human. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Alexandria says, yes, Alicia, when learning more of your personality and our behaviors is actually trauma response, a lot to process and release. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. And that was like a download that I had as an intuitive, like, how much of your personality is actually a trauma response? When I was coming out of like a toxic job environment, how many layers did I put on to try to protect myself in this environment that is actually not me? Because we will go throughout life having to protect ourselves by taking on things, right? By shrinking, all these behaviors that our brains develop to protect ourselves in harsh environments. Bringing your awareness to the fact that maybe this isn't really me. Maybe this is something that I adopted to survive and I think it for that purpose, but now I'm going to let it go. And I think connecting with our childhood selves and understanding who we were before we were roboticized. Shout out to Rashida, again, your dream strategist on YouTube. Before we were roboticized, who were we? Before we adopted trauma responses in harsh environments, who were we? How did we show up in the world? That can be extremely healing. Yeah. So yeah, getting back to my notes, y'all, yes. So that is my criticism of Western medicine, right? It individualizes a systemic issue. It makes us feel like something is wrong with us for our nervous system's response to living under constant surveillance. And Alma says, seeing double, I ingest and internalize the overseer. Fully metabolize, my inner overseer frets that I am lazy, that I harbor some secret degeneracy. I am watched and found wanting. I thought that was a beautiful, beautiful passage. Yeah. She says, seeing double, I ingest and internalize the overseer. Fully metabolized, my inner overseer frets that I am lazy, that I harbor some secret degeneracy. I am watched and found wanting. Yeah. And I'm going to link this article here. It's also in the description section. Beautiful article. Yeah. So she also talks about loitering, right? What happens when you stand still? I think I talked about this with Alicia on my On Freedom podcast. What happens when you stand still? You were harassed. Sometimes you were arrested or assaulted. What nervous system response did this generate that now you're still operating in? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm working on it, y'all. Yeah. Book on healing from childhood trauma, like an ebook, short, step-by-step guide. But yes, that should be released maybe next week. We'll see. But yes, loitering, going back to historic historical events, loitering, especially during Jim Crow. What happens when you stand still? You were harassed. Again, sometimes you're arrested or assaulted. What nervous system response did this generate? I feel like this is new. I haven't seen this anywhere. If y'all have, please let me know because I would love to read about it. But just the nervous system response to oppression, to discrimination. And how does that impact us, our families, our communities? Yeah, not even being able to stand still. Not even being able to stand still. Alma says, so when does the neurobiology of OCD end and the adaptive hypervigilance as a Black person begin? I cannot speak for other Black people with OCD, but for me, race colors my OCD experience. My Blackness and my OCD are indivisible. Yeah. I'm telling you, there's so many gems in here. She says, I cannot speak for other Black people with OCD, but for me, race colors my OCD experience. My Blackness and my OCD are indivisible. She then connects OCD to systemic anti-Black racism. This racist preoccupation with Black instrumentality is behind the enforcement of loitering laws, the legacy of sundown towns, and the stop and frisk program, to name a few. It's about disciplining Black bodies and Black daydreams. For what is loitering but daydreaming in space and in motion? Part of my Black OCD experience includes hyperbracing for any accusation that I am out of place, whether that's taking my too sweet time, browsing in a Target aisle, or uneasily walking through a park that seems pointedly absent of any other Black people. We're not allowed to linger, but my OCD sometimes means rituals that take time and look like suspicious behavior under the surveilling gaze. And then she ends the article with, but how can you call Black anxiety maladaptive? So yes. Mia says OCD should have a special term for people with it. Does it OCD-er? Am I an OCD-er? I won't be too mad at that. OCD-er? Okay. That's funny. What do y'all think about person first language? I've heard a little bit about that, but yeah, please share more about that. Person first language instead of like diagnosis first and then the person. It's kind of switched so you honor someone's humanity. Yeah, scrolling through the chat. Okay, I thought you changed your name, Hope. Good to see you. Yeah. Yeah. Mia says, I wish you all the best in therapy, but it has been more harmful than helpful. I do not know how clear in my communication they perceive something different. Yeah, and unfortunately that has been the case for a lot of us. And like I said, interviewing Kamisha Jones, who is a therapist in Chicago, a Black therapist, she also said that, right? Not all of us are created the same. Therapists are people, again, with their own biases, operating within a system that was not designed for Black people to heal. And so we're having to use tools that were not created for us to try to like improve our mental health. And so sometimes it takes alternative healing practices, like community healing models, like Kamisha leads at Sister Afia in Chicago, like Alicia's group, The Garden, right? Having a space for us to just share openly and to receive affirmations to counter the oppression that we're experiencing day in and day out. That is what I feel like the goal of therapy at the end of the day should be. You should walk away feeling affirmed. And sometimes you don't always get that in a therapeutic setting. Sometimes it takes having to interview therapists, having to try out multiple therapists to see if one fits with you, seeking alternative practices, healing practices, spiritual life coaching. For me, with Coach Yolanda on YouTube, I'll link her channel here. Just gotta shout out Coach Yolanda. Coach Yolanda changed my life. I'm not gonna cry. But yeah, her being able to connect me to, first of all, my spiritual gifts, which I had no concept of before. Books on ancestral healing practices, again, going back before colonization, realizing that you do not have to limit your healing to post-colonization and what's been available after that. You hold within you thousands of years of ancestral knowledge of healing practices that you can reawaken. If you have found that therapy doesn't work for you, if it's not healing, if it's not nourishing, if you do not feel affirmed, if you feel labeled, if you feel diagnosed, if you feel isolated, these are not things that you should be feeling after sharing something so vulnerably with someone who's supposed to be helping you, supporting you, encouraging you, uplifting you. If your therapist is trying to bring you down, which unfortunately I have heard before, that's not the person for you, right? That's not the setting for you. You should not be feeling worse about what you're experiencing after you meet with this person. Oh, thank you, YOLO XL. I appreciate that. Yeah. This has been healing for me today, too. It's been like energy processing, right? Again, eliminating shame, the more that we are able to share what we've been through openly. When you get to that point, because it's a process, once you get to that point where you're able to share, yeah, I exhibit symptoms of OCD still. And they started when I was a girl. And now I'm having to educate myself as an adult. What did that look like? What was the cause of it? How can I disrupt the cycle as an adult? Integrating healing practices that are outside of Western therapeutic settings. Tapping back into my ancestral gifts. Again, I'll be speaking with Latrice on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. What's your spiritual birthright? But yeah, realizing I'm a healer. And I think we are all healers. We all have it within us to heal ourselves. And sometimes we need support along that journey. But I fully believe that we were equipped for this life journey with all the tools that we would need to navigate it along the way. And it's just reminding ourselves of that and getting into community with other people who are on the same journey. Yeah. Thank you for the claps. Thank you for the claps. Yeah. Leslie, come on, man. The all-seeing inner eye. Look how we learn to see ourselves. Isn't it beautiful? Isn't it beautiful? Yeah. Yeah. Nia says, I feel like I would be less inclined to do rituals in public if I knew people wouldn't pay me no mind when I do them. Would I do them in public? Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what Rabia was saying before about camouflaging, which is a new term for me. How we may have suppressed our want to engage in obsessions or compulsions in public. And let me know if I'm getting the term camouflage mixed up, but that's interesting as I reflect back on my experiences. Yeah. Definitely thinking of alternative therapeutic options. Yeah. There are so many. There are so many. Like I said, for me, spiritual life coaching was a game changer. That was my first time doing healing. Let me make sure that's correct. Go through my memory. Yeah. That was my first time doing healing outside of a traditional, because again, what does traditional mean? Western, post-colonization, what we're taught is the only way to heal. But that was my first time engaging in something like that. And understanding that I have everything within me to begin to heal, to begin to rewire my brain, again, which we all have the power to do. Neuroplasticity is real. And really turning within instead of seeking without. Because we're socialized, I feel like we're socialized to seek someone's approval, someone with credentials that knows what they're doing, right? That has the degrees to help us heal. What if we turned inward, told ourselves our own story, and not saying that we don't need support along that journey, because that can bring up some really difficult things that we need help processing. But what if we leaned into our ability to heal, right? Our bodies heal when we have like a physical wound. Our bodies heal. Our bodies know how to heal. Why could that not be the case with something, with a spiritual wound, with a mental wound? Something to think about. Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Sharon. Yeah, that is very true. We were not intended to heal. With that being said, with the lack of Black therapists, they, as Black therapists themselves, had to done the healing themselves. Yeah. Yeah, that's important. That's important. Yeah. Had to have done the healing themselves. Yeah. That's important. Because you could have internalized everything that you experienced out in the world. And that's part of healing too. What have I internalized that I'm now thinking about myself? That my oppressors taught me to think about myself, that now I'm like repeating to myself. And essentially I'm my own oppressor. Mm-hmm. That's key. That's key. Yeah. Nia says, I truly feel for Black therapists. Yeah. Because like I said, just seeing the innovation that exists amongst Black therapists is truly something to see, because people are rejecting a lot of what we've been educated in. The very rigid, robotic structures, manuals, and tapping back into spiritual healing and bringing that into the therapeutic process. Yeah. So it's using the credentials that you gained for good and recognizing their limitations. I think that's important too. Yellow XOXO says, I need to watch the replay. I wish I wasn't. Oh, no, you're good. I wasn't working to share and be a part of this healing, but everything has been so relatable beyond. That warms my heart. That warms my heart. And no worries. Yes, the replay will be available, y'all. Absolutely. Reading about other people's stories in OA, their literature, and looking on YouTube has helped me. Awareness is half the battle. Yeah. And realizing that you have the power to seek out information. Right? Yeah. I agree. Okay, I thought so, Rabia. Thank you. Camouflaging refers to an individual's conscious or unconscious efforts to hide their natural traits or characteristics in order to blend in. Okay, yes, or appear more socially adept in social situations. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and this is very helpful. If you have suppressed some of these behaviors that you engage in, maybe behind the scenes to blend in. Once you're behind the scenes, once you feel safe, can you then explore why you may be doing this? A pattern to your behavior. When you're in a certain situation, do you notice these behaviors ticking up? And if so, what's triggering that? How can you move yourself to a safer environment if possible? Give yourself grace and compassion if you have to stay. Yeah. Oh, we appreciate you. Yes, I share the above in case it helps others. We appreciate that. Yes. Yeah. I meant OCDA, not OA. Oh, no, you're good. You're good. OCDA, not OA. Gotcha. Yeah, y'all. I think that was all my notes for today. But I appreciate y'all being here. Like I said, I linked the article. Let me get the title one more time. Watcher Within, Watchers Without, My Black OCD Story by Alma Levon Rice. Linked in the description section, as well as the Cleveland Clinic article that I pulled from, laying out symptoms, causes of OCD, treatment options, therapy resources are there as well. Black Girl Depression, my video on how our depression symptoms may show up differently outside of the standard manual that is used to diagnose mental health disorders. The Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is a mouthful every time I try to say it. But yeah. Yeah, I agree. Rabia says it's so beautiful to hear and read other Black women discuss their mental psychological experiences, isn't it? It really is. It really is. Yeah. Yeah. Because you realize you're not alone. You're not alone. We all out here trying, struggling some days, healing. It's all a process. Yeah. Yeah, thank y'all. Thank y'all so much for being here, for sharing everything that you shared in the chat. Again, I will be speaking with Latrice Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern about your spiritual birthright, reclaiming that from ancestors, reawakening those gifts that we all have housed within us. So yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for being here. Always lovely to see you. Abdullah says, thank you for this conversation. You're welcome. And thank you for sharing that you shared. That was like a mic drop moment. Because I got to go back on that, right? Black people being diagnosed with a disorder, seeking freedom. Thank you. Mm-hmm. This was enlightening, freeing, and healing. I love that. I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, and thank all y'all for your kindness and vulnerability. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah. This has been like a community healing space today, which is always the goal for my channel, really. So I appreciate y'all. Rabia says, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, someone. Sorry. Don't want to intrude conversations, but yes, Latrice says this is wonderful. I love that. Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. Yes, have a good day, y'all, and take good care of yourself. We deserve it. I agree. Yes, please take care of yourself. If this conversation was triggering, which hopefully it wasn't, but if it was, take time to rest, process, ground yourself, breathe as you absorb this information, because it can be a lot, especially if you're just recognizing for the first time symptoms of OCD. And maybe seeking out an official diagnosis with a medical professional. So give yourself time, patience, grace, all the understanding, love. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. He says, I'm just curious if anyone isn't Black here, but was just curious about our experiences. Oh, interesting. Thank you for the well-needed conversation. You're so welcome. You're so welcome. Yeah. That is interesting. That is interesting. Well, yes, I appreciate y'all. And until Thursday, take it easy. Give yourself care, compassion, grace, understanding. Um, and yeah, with that, y'all, until next time, thank you for being here. Always appreciate you.